What was that? And where is God? Where is God at that breaking point for people? And when the church is silent, God can be silent. Because God has asked us to be God's still speaking voice. And so I'm curious for you all how your voice might be part of God's voice speaking to people in that storm, in that void, in that pit, who really need to hear a word from God. And so this book was born because I was convicted. I am a sinner. By neglect, by lack of showing up, because I was busy being a minister. I was busy helping people and my own family. I didn't have time for relationships. So that's why I asked you about that person on your heart. Is there someone who is connecting with you for you to pour into? And so this book was born, and it's a resource, and so that is why I wanted to share it with you. This is a book that was written for adults who are connected in faith communities, in schools, families, and it's a way to have this conversation of what's going on. It's based on the Surgeon General's report, a lot of good data, but then practical steps and things that we all can do. And at the end of the day, when you really want to know how to support the flourishing mental health of children, do you want me to tell you what it is? Like the one thing that you could do to help children's mental health? Anybody know? If you could only do one thing, what would it be? Spend time with them, listen.
Pray.
What else?
Pray.
Pray?
No.
Well, what I have found from my research is for your own mental health, tend to your brain. How is your mental health? And I just read a book, I think it's called The Deepest Well or The Deep Well. It's about adverse childhood experiences. And she says it too, that when there is an adult who can be a buffer, who has enough mental wellness, mental health to show up in that space for a child, that helps them navigate all that they're dealing with. And so for your own sake and for the sake of the children and teens that you love, this is your permission slip. This is your encouragement to do more, because I know we can do more, right, for your mental health. And what might be one thing in addition to what you're doing now that would help you feel that sense of mental health and being strong in your mental health. And so this is a book you can read in groups. It's on Amazon, the publisher's Chalice Press. And so this book was born. And then my publisher said, Sarah, hey, wait, what if we wrote a book for kids? And so I prayed to God. I said, God, Sydney, help me, because I think this is what we need to do. And so that's when the Survival Guide was born. And this is a tool, it's another resource, and it's been used across the country by schools, youth groups, clubs. It's spiritual but not religious, and so it works in a school system. And what I thought about was Sydney, as my personal case study and the research I did. And I realized that peers are often the first to know. Telling their friends, texting. But our peers are not trained. Nobody has resourced them well enough to know how to respond. And so this is a resource that helps you do the prevention of training our youth what to do when a friend reaches out to you with thoughts of self-harm or suicide. And so there's a toolkit that youth create for themselves. And so I find that almost everyone has a friend who is depressed, anxious, have had thoughts of suicide, who use drugs. So that's that. But then there's also something that I'm confident would have saved my niece's life. How many of you were growing up in a time where there was a purity culture about human sexuality and like your virginity was like the sacred thing you had to protect until you were married? I was in the 80s and I went to school in Texas, so there was a purity pledge, and some people got a beautiful ring, and I just wanted the jewelry. But you know, you give yourself to Jesus until you're married, right? And so I wondered, you know, that's saving your virginity, but I thought, what if we could actually save people's lives? And what if there was a pledge to do that? And so that's what this book provides. There is a whole section that's a safety pledge. And the idea is that every youth, and this can start really at age 8. You know, my niece was 4 when she was talking about suicide. So when kids can read, that's really how soon they need a safety plan. And I hate that that's true. And so a safety plan is for youth to think about 3 trusted adults that they can talk to if they're having these overwhelming thoughts, to die, to not be here anymore. That's a phrase that's used, I don't want to be here anymore. And my niece's suicide note said, I just can't do this anymore. So that's a very common feeling. And that's alarming. Like, we sometimes brush that off, like, oh, you can do it, you know, hang in there, you know, toughen up, get over it. No, I mean, right now it's a deeper crisis than that. And so they come up with 3 adults that they trust enough to share this with, their names and their cell phone numbers. And so they write that down in this booklet, the 3 adults, and then they sign their name, promising that if they're having these thoughts, these feelings, these plans, they'll tell their 3 safe people. And I encourage that because what happens when they just tell their peers and their friends? Nothing, or sometimes they're encouraged. And that's happening on the internet. They are sharing means of dying. And they are creating a culture where that's seen as an acceptable way to be. And that's how my niece found her method, was on the internet. And she had attempted many times, we later found, very visibly all around the house and the yard. How could we miss those signs? It would never happen to my family, not my daughter. It's happening to our daughters and sons and cousins and nephews. And so one thing we can do is to do the preventative work and provide the resources. And that's what's exciting about this opportunity, is to get people thinking already. You don't have any you can never imagine this being you ever at any point. Good. We hope it's never you. But if it is you, you have thought about it and you know what you can do, whether it's for yourself or a friend. A lot of times, for the reason why peers are not effective is because they are thinking about the moment. They're not thinking so much about the future. They don't want to lose their friendship. They don't want to make their friend mad at them. And they love their friend so much, they can't imagine losing that friendship. And so that's often what keeps youth from telling. They don't want to get people in trouble. And so our churches just happen to be beautifully intergenerational spaces where we could intentionally build opportunities for youth and children to have those safe adults, right? Because a lot of times children don't have a safe adult. So maybe you are that safe adult for a child.